Hey everybody, 2 o'clock, it's time to go. This is Meg's chair. It's a little sad right now, but she's gonna be here any second. She actually was in Rapid City giving a talk to a leadership group. So her and Shelly are just screaming in off the interstate as we speak. So they'll pop in a second. Bless her heart for working hard to get here. One of the things that the topic of the week is team versus self-driven. And so we're going to talk about that in just a second. Actually, that'll be fun because Meg is self-driven and I'm team-driven. So I'll have a really fun perspective on that. First thing though, announcements. Let's see. One of the first ones that I really love is that I'm going to be in Melbourne and Brisbane in August, and I'm setting up a mastermind for C-level executives for, let me think of the words, organizational culture and efficiency. So if you know any C-level executives that would be interested in that topic in those two cities, please let me know. We'd love to connect with them. And if for some reason they couldn't attend the mastermind, I'd be happy to have a cocktail or a cup of coffee and just talk about awesome stuff. So appreciate that. One thing that Shelly brought to our attention is that our book is now available on barnesandnoble.com. So if you're interested in buying from there, you're certainly welcome to. We have no reviews there yet because it literally just went live. So if you haven't written us a review yet and are planning to, that might be a really great spot to do it to help us get reviews on that platform. Actually, if you've already given us a review on the Amazon platform and you would love to give us another one or the same one on barnesandnoble.com, we would really appreciate it. We're not sure how the logins and stuff work on that. So I know on Amazon, if you're a user, you can review a product on Amazon, even if you didn't buy it through your Amazon account. Don't know how that works with Barnes & Noble though, so not sure how that'll work. But check it out. It's super exciting and fun, and we're super excited to get picked up by Barnes & Noble. So that's super fun. Let's see, other things happening in our world. I had a wonderful conversation with a company or a podcast this morning called, hey Terry, a podcast this morning for deal. They're calling it deals, and of course that's a big tough guy sort of topic about making deals. But really what we were talking about was how important it is for the cultural piece, and it was really, really exciting how to incorporate Ike's leadership and some of our cultural work into that. So he was actually really impressed, and he does deals all the time with different companies. So he's a lawyer, and he's like definitely needed to connect with us and help us do a lot of his work, a lot of his clients' work. So that was pretty exciting. So I'm going to follow up with him later. So that's cool. As far as talks and other booking things, I'm not sure we have anything going on, but not in the very near term. We have May is coming, and that's got a lot of stuff. I'm actually out of the country for most of the first half of May. So that's sort of a black hole on my calendar. And then, so then of course, all around that is insane. So poor Meg and Shelly will be on their own in this office anyway, and coordinating with all of our people all over the US. So that'll be an exciting experiment, and how much we've grown and how it works without a third of the team in the office. So we'll see how it goes. I had another thought that just flashed through my brain. I'm doing a project management and guiding organizational change week, which is really great and fun. It's week of May 20th. So the first 2 days are project management, how to actually plan projects, apply resources, develop a budget and a schedule, like really how to get things done kind of stuff. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of that week is guiding organizational change, which is really what a lot of the second part of the book is based on. But this is a very tactical, and how do you actually apply part 2 of the book into your organization. So that's that's in Rapid City, South Dakota. So if you're interested in that, let me know. Happy to send along the link to that. I might actually just post it in the group. So hey, Kayla. So those are the announcements. We'll get into the I'm going to grab a book off my shelf here. Well, I got to remember to buy more books. We have been selling books like mad, and every time we do a talk, usually there's a package where everyone in the audience gets a book as well as our normal selling. And so we're out of the 3,000 books that I ordered just a few months ago. So, but I do have some on the shelf, but I'm almost out. So we need to get some more. Shelly is on a tear to get books out to people. If you want to send a book to somebody, let us know. And of course, we want those reviews on barnesandnoble.com and on Amazon. So thanks for that. So let's get to talking about team-driven versus self-driven employees. So this is a really important concept. And the more we study it and the more we work with teams, the more, I just dropped some, my sweater. The more we work with teams, the more we see the differences between team and self-driven people. So one thing that we'll just start talking about is we've talked a lot about chaos versus order. So this is the team versus self side, the left to right. And so fixers, just to remind you, fixers and stabilizers are team-driven. Organizers and independents are self-driven. Now, there's some, not necessarily confusion, but there's some clarification that we like to talk about when we talk about team to self, because a lot of people think that if you're self-driven, then you're an egomaniac or you're narcissistic or whatever. That's certainly possible. And it's also possible for the team side people to be narcissistic and sort of self-focused. But the difference really is, again, it's that, remember, we're talking about work environment. So self-driven people can tend to be able to work on their own a lot easier. They can go away and work on a project and stay very focused, organizers, for a very long time and just focus on that thing and don't really need input from everybody else. Independents are also self-driven. They also can be independent. They can also not necessarily work in a group of people. The tricky thing with independents, though, is that they have a lot of ideas. They're big brainstormers. They like disruption for the sake of disruption. And the challenge with that is that it's harder for chaos people, both fixers and independents, to really pull things off. So the trick of the matter is that independents need order tolerant people to actually get things done. And so while the self-driven organizer can go in, work, the self-driven independent can work, but they tend to be a lot more of the whiteboarding, idea generating kind of worker, and then things just don't get done. So not that that's one or better than the other, it's just they work differently. The other side of it is the team side. And the team side, the stabilizers, what we've seen is team-driven is we really care about who's around us. We can be kind of a caregiver type personality. We can really, when decision happens, we worry about what everyone else is doing. But a lot of times what we're finding is that we also worry about how we fit into that social fabric. So it's not really just we care about people, it's how am I connected with everyone around me? And if there is a break or a fracture in that world, that's very, very stressful for stabilizers. And then fixers, of course, they're team-driven. They like chaos, though. So they're all about disruption, but they do it in a way that is what they tend to worry more about how people will take it. So if there's a decision that's going to be a hard decision that people aren't going to like, fixers don't like to make those kind of decisions. They worry about making sure people are okay with what's happening. Independents, self-driven, tend to make decisions, and if people are pissed about it, they really don't care. They'll get over it, whatever. Same with organizers. Organizers are very much listen. They're the order people. We have a great example of somebody who was very orderly and is kind of in a planning role. And somebody showed up with way too many people for the venue and for the food. And it was just a total disaster. And they were not afraid to tell that client that, forget it. You are done. Not interested in having you here anymore. And so while we're a fixer, we would see that and go, oh my gosh, how can we fix this? How can we get more food in here? How can we do this? How can we bring a tent in and all of that? And a stabilizer might go, this is trouble. Somebody should fix this. I'm just going to see how everyone's doing and where I fit into what's going to happen next. And an organizer was just like, this is not acceptable. That's not how the rules work. Get out. So an independent might say, wow, this is going to be a crazy show right now. I can't wait to see how this all works out. And so that's kind of an example of how a situation is handled differently by everybody. And that's been quite recently in our field. So that's why it's making me smile. It's bringing up other contexts. So I'm just going to start at the bottom. No one voted for the bottom questions on the survey, but I really wanted to talk about them briefly anyway, because a lot of times we are curious about this anyway. So, here comes Meg and Shelly. So this will be kind of crazy for a minute. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Yes.
I brought over your chair and said how sad it was that it was empty.
Jelly.
But you were looking for the higher and better good of the organization, and you'd be right here.
I am.
She is.
Look at how fancy I look.
I know. Look at you. Look so fancy. I like your little necklace. What's on your necklace?
It's got us. God grant me the serenity to accept things I cannot change, courage to change things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. I need that because I'm an independent.
I was going to say, I don't know if you really need that urging. Maybe the wisdom to know the difference part.
Well, yeah.
Because, you can always roll with stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going over the some of the differences of how people would react. So one of the examples I used was, let's say you're in a planning role, or imagine a planner and somebody shows up with way too many people, there's not enough food, there's this big thing. Mm-hmm. How would they all react to it?
Oh.
So that was one example I used. Another example that we see a lot is with executive teams, when we're working with a lot of companies right now that have acquired other companies or merged or started a new division of the company. And so what we see there is each personality or each culture type reacts a little differently. So the fixer might think, oh my gosh, we have new people coming together. How can we manage this? How can I help make this as easy as possible? That would be the fixer mentality. An independent might say, oh, good. All right. We got all kinds of change happening. I can't wait to see what part I get to play and what I get to create and develop. The organizer is going to say, I need to know what the hell's going on, why we're doing it, and what's coming next. But not in any context of how's everyone else doing. It's more about, I want to know what the plan is. And then the stabilizers are thinking, is everyone else on board with this? What's going on? We don't really know what's happening. This feels really scary and chaotic. I'm going to wait and see how everyone else kind of falls out before I make any moves. And that's why a lot of times stabilizers can seem resistant because what they're really waiting for is to see where everyone else is going to be. And once enough people are moving forward, then they'll be like, okay, everyone seems like they're all in on this. I feel like I can move too. And then all the stabilizers tend to come together because, of course, they want to feel like everyone's kind of in it. So that's one example of how the different culture types would react to the exact same situation. No.
I'm sorry. I'm not really sure
okay.
where we're at in the conversation. Okay. So I will contribute.
I just wanted to give you if you wanted to jump in. Meg is a champion of not interrupting. So I always feel like I need to give you some kind of pause. And then,
okay.
But I will carry on.
Carry on.
Okay.
I'm still catching up.
Processing. Well, plus you're like screaming over here in your car. So, all right. So the other piece is I'm going over the bottom two really.
Oh, okay.
Started to talk about that.
Okay.
So being self-driven mean I can't work in a team? Of course not. This is probably why no one really voted for these two options, because I think we all know that we can work in any environment that we choose to, that's going to serve us, that we want to tackle, that interests us, all of that. Sometimes we take a job because we have to. We can do anything we need to. But take it from me as a fixer, my first job was a stabilizer job, but it was also a little bit of an organizer-y job in the sense of I really worked, even though I was in a team, I worked really independently all the time. Like there was no like constant collaboration, and I didn't thrive in that environment. I could do it and I learned a ton, but wasn't really happy there. And not that we talk about happiness, I was not thriving there, I guess is another way to say it. Mm-hmm. So we always say you can do the things. But it doesn't mean that that will be a lifelong journey for you that's going to make you thrive the best, going to bring out the best in you, have you be most productive. One example of that might be lawyers are a great example. I've been talking to a lot of lawyers lately. It just happened to become my field. One of them is a really fun gal named Tina Martini. She's a lawyer in Chicago. She's an organizer. And what we found out was she's very orderly and she's fine working on her own. And if you think about lawyers, how they tend to work is they have their own book of clients. They might have a shared admin or legal paralegals, but most of the time they build their own clientele. So they're really working in their own business, and that's who they interface with on the daily basis. They don't really have teams the way that a lot of corporations have teams. And so she's an organizer, and plus law is like lots of details, right? Well, I just met today a lawyer who's a fixer, which I had never met one of those before. And it was interesting because for him, just being a lawyer, doing the normal lawyery things with one client at a time, what he did is he got into mergers and acquisitions because he did. I didn't talk to him about this. I'm only suspecting that probably he didn't like just working on his own in a normal lawyer environment. He was out now. I was on his podcast and he worked with teams on getting deals done and all that stuff. So he's as a lawyer, he probably felt like he didn't fit into a normal mold of a lawyer. So he's found a way to be more of a team-based lawyer than the average lawyer job. So that was pretty interesting to me. I think he's the first fixer lawyer I've met. So pretty cool. Yeah.
I think one question that I've had a couple different times is, well, those self-driven people, then they're kind of more like interested in how something serves them. And so I've had people cleverly try and make it so that they could argue that someone that they work with who is self-driven is whatever, snarky, self-involved, narcissistic. The answer is no, that's not really a thing. It's about how they process information best. It's not about, if they're trying to put their objectives first. And so, again, just as a friendly reminder, culture types aren't about personalities. And they also don't account for if someone is being snarky or crummy. That's not a real thing. So if you have someone who's acting like they're trying to be self-involved or put their own objectives first or are doing crummy things in the workplace, that's a different issue than being self-driven.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the key things about behaviors that seem narcissistic or self-involved, it's really interesting because a lot of times we find that can be, I should say, stabilizer behavior when stabilizers are very anxious. Mismatched, yep. Anxious. Or anxious, or there's a big change going on and they don't know how to think about it. We have one client who is a stabilizer and he is very anxious about what's going on in the organization right now. And he actually behaves kind of like he's a narcissist. But what I think really is going on is that he doesn't really know how to behave in this sort of crazy work environment. And so he's just kind of freaking out. So a lot of times bad behavior, if you look back toward the root cause of it, a lot of it is what's in the culture type system, which is the chaos to order and the team to self. So if someone's mismatched and they're isolated and they're a stabilizer, that's going to make them act a little crazy. So what we really try to do is back into the corner of, okay, well, this is weird behavior. What would be causing this behavior? And try to solve that root cause issue. And so that's part of what the culture type system does, is it kind of helps explain behavior that might not be an obvious reason for the behavior. Okay, so does being team driven mean I can't work alone? No, but of course, when I first started working for myself, I was on my own. I went from the big Landsat team to I worked for a small school for a while and part of a team. I was pretty isolated there. And then I went to work for myself, and really for myself, like a solo entrepreneur. and didn't like it at all. In fact, even when my daughter was born and I was only working, I took some time off work for maternity leave, and then I only worked 4 hours a week or 4 hours a day part-time while she kind of grew up and all that, and while she was a tiny baby. And even that was not enough. Being out of the house, being isolated for most of the day, with the exception of 4 hours, was really hard for me. And so it's not only about work, it's also about environment generally that you prefer. So, some people that are sort of bachelors or bachelorettes for a really long time. And that's maybe because they're just fine being on their own. Maybe they're an organizer or an independent and they don't feel the need to be around people all the time. So you can sort of read some of that behavior in other ways too, besides just work.
Yep. When Rachel and I first started working together, Rachel, anytime there was an opportunity for us to be working together, like in the same physical location, she's like, are you coming over here? Do you want to hang out? Let's work together. And so I was like, yeah, okay, sure. And I would come over here, and not begrudgingly, but as an independent, I'm like, listen, man, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to want to visit with you because we are good friends outside of working together, and we like to talk and I ideate about all the cool stuff we want to do and our own personal lives. So I'm like, it's just super distracting because I can't think. I love you. I can't hang out with you every day. And so we finally sort of went through several iterations of this conversation, and I said, let's plan to be in the same space for a certain amount of days a month or whatever that looks like, and we agreed to that. And so now that works out great because we know when we're going to be around each other and when we're not. And what I need to make sure I do, because as I'm like, I could work at home by myself every day and not do video calls or any of that. Like, I don't need to see people necessarily. So I have to make sure that I'm, if something actually probably would be better served if we're in the same place, then I'm trying to make it a point that, yes, let's be in the same place. So that's a concession that I make, knowing my culture type and my work preferences, so that Rachel and I can work as a team well.
Yes. And I know that if I work on my own in the office by myself for too long, by like Thursday, I need to go sit in the coffee shop and work, even though I have my headphones in and I'm working on copy for a ClickFunnels or whatever we might be doing, or a Forbes article or whatever is happening, or applying for a speaking opportunity. And I'm focused with my headphones in, I still like the noise and the busy and other humans and all of that stuff. And we live in a pretty small town, so I know about every third person that walks in the door. So if I feel like having a conversation, I could take my headphones out, say hi for 5 minutes, they go away, and I can get back to work. And so you just have to, it's a really self-awareness thing. And I know that if I stayed here by myself and work Thursday, I could be productive, but I would not be very pleasant to be around. So I don't need to be I can't be alone for a big stretch of time. And in fact, last week I was feeling kind of bluesy, generally speaking. And I think that was because for a long time, at least the first quarter of the year, when I was home for a week and gone for a week and home for a week and gone for a week. And when I'm gone, I'm networking, I'm at events, I'm filming whatever, I'm speaking, whatever it might be happening. And that's feeds that team need that I have. And then I worked at home for a week. And then that next week I ended up being home. And I was like, oh, I'm not out doing the things. And so I think that was a big part of it. I mean, you can gut it out, right? It's only a week. It's not that big a deal. But it is something to be self-aware about and help yourself and others. Because poor Meg, as an independent, she didn't give a shit if she wouldn't care if she's ever over here. But I appreciate the concession that she makes to spend time with me so I don't go crazy.
Thank you. I love you.
It's really a thing.
Yeah. Okay, what are we talking about next?
The second one now.
Oh, how do self-driven individuals interact differently on projects versus team-driven individuals? This is the second week in a row that someone has added
and
their
it's
own.
Karen. She fixed it independent.
She's an independent.
Those
independent
independents,
fixer.
man, they're
Yeah.
ready to just
She's
do
like, your
whatever.
questions are boring. Let me ask one that actually applies to my life.
Right.
Okay, how do self-driven individuals interact differently on projects versus team-driven individuals? Well, when you're self-driven, you like to have some time to think about what is going on. And so that might mean that in a meeting, a lot of times in an organizational setting, you can't just skip meetings. So we talk a lot about the extremes where, the fixer throws this surprise meeting about this cool new thing and they're so excited, and the independent and the organizer are running away crying, screaming, or telling them to F off. So
In their head, probably not.
yeah, not out loud. In reality, we don't have the option most of the time to say, hey, listen, I'm not coming to the meeting because I really need time to process this information by myself. That's not a real thing. So what you might see is a self-driven person sitting in the meeting. They might be doodling, or they might be writing notes so incessantly that you ask them a question and they don't answer because they're not hearing you, not because they're not paying attention, because their brain is not tuned into the communication of the group. It's tuned into the process of unfolding what's going on in the current situation. And so a lot of times, I think I'm a doodler. I was really pleased when I found that there was psychological research to prove that doodling actually means that some people are listening. Because forever I got in a lot of trouble, even with myself, kind of had like this guilt, like, gosh, I shouldn't be doodling. I should be paying attention. But I actually, like in college, I remember I found the classes more interesting if I was doodling. And I thought really seems backwards, but it's a real thing. So I think a lot of times self-driven people on a project or in a meeting, they're more seemingly reserved. What you might assume, if you don't know about culture types and the magic that is IX leadership, you'll think that they're checked out. They get pegged with that a lot, being checked out or not caring about what's going on. And then, so it's like my brain is mush. I can't even remember.
I know you have had a big day already. Can I add something?
Yes, please
to
do.
the thing, because another thing that I've noticed is, so when we're on a video call, now remember I'm team driven, Meg is self-driven. So we're on a video call. I always am kicking Meg under the table because she's listening and processing, but then she gets the RBF happening, right? She looks like she's mad. Yeah, look at this face. Ooh,
this is boy. It looks bad when I look at it.
It's so
Even
scary.
when I look at
know
it,
that's
it's
why I'm
bad.
like, you look like you're gonna kill somebody. And so what happens is, I think honestly, a part of it's her self-driven thought process. Like, I'm always thinking, I want to be engaged. I want to make sure they're feeling engaged, and they're like, I'm trying to give them feedback all the time because I'm a fixer. I'm a team person. I'm always trying to think of, being engaged. And you'll see a lot of times my body language is always lean forward, lean forward, lean forward. I'm always trying to be with you through the video. And Meg, I think, because she's that's not her priority. She's thinking of the issue or the problem or creative ideas on how to solve something. She's not necessarily thinking of the person. She's thinking of what's happened, like the thing, the topic. And so then she'll be thinking, and then she doesn't that's not how she connects with people. So anyway, I think that might actually be part of it. We've never actually talked about that. But I think that might be part of it, because she's back there and she's just thinking away. You can just see the gears turning behind her eyeballs, but she doesn't realize that she looks like she might kill somebody. So
I've been practicing. Our PR team says, practice what your not RBF face looks like. And so then I go, and they're like, no, you look like an idiot.
A crazy person.
Yeah. So I'm trying to find the in-between.
That'll be a good job. We'll just keep you talking. Then you don't have to write. Then you're not resting.
Yeah. Let's see. So sort of interesting connected to this question is in terms of a project, and how do you make sure? So a lot of times it's actually about questions we get are about the work of things, maybe not necessarily the meeting engagement or even the engagement of people just generally on a project, but actually the doing of the things. And so a self-driven person, actually it's more order chaos. So an order person in this case would be more likely to do sort of a lot of the upfront work, research, in terms of like research, gathering data, knowing what's going to happen, who's going to be impacted, how's it all going to map out. Chaos tolerant people are having big ideas and we got to put a strategic plan together and like hand waving and doing these things. Or if you're an independent, then you're off in the corner, whatever, doodling and thinking about how is this going to be a big, huge thing? How are you going to solve the problems?
That's right.
And so I think in terms of project work, it's really smart to think about what different preferences people have on your team, and then what work that needs to get done makes sense for those people. Because a lot of times what happens is people are just they're in a mismatch, you know, with their role. We've been talking a lot about this with an organization we're going to be partnering with, that, you know, within marketing, there's two different kinds of kind of tracks of marketing. So there's like marketing strategy, which is static, where the message has to go out, what the brand is,
the copy,
blah, blah, blah. Like kind of the not creative side of marketing, but the actual static, really important nuts and bolts of it, tactical. Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then there's dynamic side of marketing, which social media to put out there, which click funnels do you use, which whatever, what do people care about, what do we sponsor, you know, what do we affiliate with as an organization. And so if someone who really prefers chaos is in that marketing strategy role, they might not thrive, and vice versa. And so I think a lot of times what's really valuable about culture types and understanding people through change and in a project setting is what work will people really love to do? What are they really good at? Because if you give an organizer the job of being in charge of the whole group and making sure that everybody's engaged and, you know, hey, and you could tell them to order the pizza for every meeting and they'll get that done hotsy-totsy. But if you tell them they're going to run the meeting and, you know, help people come up with a creative new whatever thing, widget, they're not going to love that. Doesn't mean they can't do it, but it's really important to think about. And what we talk about is making teams better. We're not necessarily fixing a problem. We're making teams better. So if your team is already great and people can tolerate doing work they don't love, awesome. On the next project, I would challenge you to think about aligning people with the work they will love and seeing what that difference feels like.
And I think the other thing too about that is it's really hard to talk about team to self without thinking about the chaos to order piece too. And so because so much of how like if you think about a project work, you know, like the organizer, self-driven organizer, they want to know what the agenda is so they know what they're supposed to prepare for. The stabilizer might want an agenda because they want to know who's going to be invited to the meeting. And the fixers are doesn't give a shit about the agenda. Trust me, don't care if I ever have an agenda for any meeting ever. And I don't know about independence. Wow, what do you think independents feel like?
I like to have an agenda so I know what I'm going to have to be engaged in.
Talk about.
What do I have to tolerate?
Right, exactly.
I don't mean that, but I kind of
Yes, you do. Yes, I think you do. And so that's the trick, like, because the topics on the agenda that she's not involved in, she has to gut out in order to get to the things that she does. And so fixer, like for me, I'm just like, whatever, I'm up for it. There's humans in the room. Let's solve problems together. And plus, if it's only one of those meetings where it's designed for reporting out and it's designed for a little team building, I love those too, because then I get to find out what everyone's doing and how everyone's doing. So I always fight against the idea that you hear different philosophies about meetings. I see it on LinkedIn all the time. Meetings should be half as long as you think they should take, and then they're going to be super efficient. You just talk about the thing you need to do and you get out of there. Like, to me, that's a really self-driven attitude, because what a lot of people use meetings for is to connect the team and stay in touch, make sure everyone's doing okay. And you know, the independents in the room or the self-driven people in the room are like, why are we reporting out? Send an email. Why are we talking all in a group about this? Well, it's because most of the people in your teams, if you're like have a cross cut of everybody, they need some kind of connection. And if they're in front of their computer all day ticking away, they need somehow to be connected. Now, one of the things I was reminded of the other day is that a lot of big organizations have these internal chat things.
Oh yeah.
And
love it.
It's so interesting because I think this is how people stay connected and only just talk about the things they need to talk about without actually having to connect. But the people that want to be more connected, the stabilizers and the fixers, I think they're on there freaking all the time. And I think there's a huge amount of time being wasted on those things because we feel like we need to be connected, but yet our job keeps us trapped behind a computer. And that also kind of goes back to the generations topic where everyone's like, well, millennials are job hoppers. Well, no, they're just going from job to job until they find the job that they feel like they belong to and be a part of and are valued. And so I think it's really that team to self gradient probably has a lot more to do with a lot more decision making than we give it credit for.
Yeah.
Another interesting thing I've noticed, I worked with one independent, self-driven guy, and there's some independents seem to be kind of falling into two categories the more we work with them. One are people like Meg, who have a really amazing ability to tap into empathy and understanding people, like providing some space for humans to be humans. And then there are independents that don't seem to have the capacity. They don't understand at all that people need human connection. So I work with one gentleman, and I basically required him to talk to his general manager at least for a half hour every week. So at 9:00 on a Tuesday, sit down and talk to Helen for 30 minutes, just to touch base with her. Put away your computer, put your phone, and actually talk to a human. And he was like, that's such a waste of time. I'm like, no. That nourishes Helen. She's a fixer. She needs a team. She needs to know how you're doing and all that. But he honestly didn't get at all that she needed that nurturing that in her would actually pay him back in some way, in big ways. Because if you don't give people team, then they become very twitchy and weird. I can attest.
I also can attest to that. Twitchy and weirdness.
Twitchy.
All right. What's up next?
What are some common misunderstandings between team-driven and self-driven employees?
I think one of the main things between team-driven and self-driven is that team-driven people are perceived by self-driven people as weak or needy or give-inners. They do whatever to supplement the group. And to some extent, I mean, that's their nature, but that's not really what they're intending to do. So I think a lot of the common misperception, if you don't know about culture types and IX leadership, is that, those people, those team-driven people they give in. They don't have elbows or arms to be twisted. They just do whatever. They pander to the needs of the masses and do whatever. I'm not venting, I promise. They do whatever they have to. I'm actually thinking about my sister. So my sister, one of my sisters, is a really deep stabilizer. And I'll tell you what, like, she and I could not have more opposite perspectives. Well, obviously, literally, we couldn't, because
You do actually have exact opposite perspectives.
Yeah, and she, I just don't get it. I have to actually practice thinking about her perspective to have a conversation with her on something we don't disagree about. I mean, otherwise I love her. She's like my best friend, but I just don't get it. I will never agree with or understand her perspective. It's
very big of you to see that.
Yeah.
What do you do about it? Well, how does that change your behavior?
Well, I think, when we have any sort of debate, we kind of just laugh it off and say, well, we will agree to disagree because there is no way for the two of us to see it the same way. And she and I have had the conversation a lot. So we have this agreement. I think that's how you do it. You figure out what those misunderstandings are and then say, listen, we know that we'll never see this coin from the same side. That's fine. Let's not make our relationship about that. Let's make it about all these other amazing things.
What if you had to do something together, like at work?
Alicia and I? Well, gee, I don't know, because our debates are about things that are not like, they're like, okay, let me think about a situation. Like, what if we worked?
Like, what if you guys decided to do an event together, which has happened before? What does that?
I would have to. So here's a good example. We both are in training education world. She does teaching education of youth. I do adults. And I'm very much like, we've had conversations about parents not having, like, what would you do if you had parents who weren't taking care of their kids? Obviously, there's some legal things you can do, like notify the authorities, blah, blah, blah. I would just have a conversation with parents and say, your behavior is unacceptable. And I know that because of these 3 things that I've noticed with your child, blah, blah, blah. And Alicia's like, well, yeah, but you know, they probably don't have very much money and they're not trying to be mean to their kids and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't care about any of that, like, excuses aside. So I think if she and I were working together in a situation like that, what I would say is, you know what? I feel very comfortable talking to the parents about the situation in a non-confrontational as much as possible. I won't be confrontational to them as much as possible. And say, you know, here are some guidelines. These are the things that we hope you could do so that you can support your kid. And you, Alicia, stabilizer person, love and care for that child and help that child learn how to. So I think probably split responsibilities so that it, you know, something that resonates with each person.
Mm-hmm. And I think too, that's an interesting, I just thought about that too, because it's almost like you get to do the good cop, bad cop thing in the sense of use the culture types to your benefit, right? So if that was an example, yes, perhaps your sister could be the one to do the confrontational meeting. You wouldn't think of it that way, but she would. And then you could take care of the kids. But why would you force each other to do the wrong job?
Right.
When you clearly are more comfortable talking out the situation, and she's clearly better at loving and caring for the kid.
Yeah.
But we do that in business all the time. All the time. We make people do things in a way that doesn't suit them. I mean, it's pretty interesting. It's very interesting.
Well, I think it's a lot associated with sort of like intended authority. So when I was an HR manager, there was a lot of, you know, well, Rachel, you're Shelly's supervisor, and you have to have a meeting with Shelly because her performance is crummy. And you're like, oh,
love me, Shelly.
Just kidding. That's not true at all. And you know, Rachel, who may be, let's say Rachel's a stabilizer and she's super uncomfortable with conflict and she doesn't want to hurt anybody's feelings and all the things she can think of that this is the most awful experience that she'll ever have. And, you know, it seemed like the perception in that situation was, well, you just have to gut it out because you're the boss. Like, you're that person's supervisor.
Just do it.
So, but I thought, well, gosh, why would I send my colleague in to have this really uncomfortable, crappy meeting that I am an expert at having? Like, I have these meetings all the time, and I actually kind of enjoy them because I like to tell people that you're not being accountable for your work.
Because she doesn't have that need to please people.
Yeah.
Because she's self-driven.
None at all.
I know, this is
none.
This is where shit works. I'm just telling you.
And so I would say to Rachel, I'd say, hey, you know what? Let's develop the paperwork together for the meeting and talk about what those performance objectives look like. I'd be happy to be in there and support you in the meeting. I'll kick it off. You talk about the mass of the work that needs to be done, and then I'll close it up with expectations and how we're going to move forward. So I took all of those ugly parts out, and then the Rachel in this situation was able to just say, well, here's the actual work of the matter. Like, these are the things that aren't being done that I need you to do.
Just the facts, ma'am.
Just the facts. So,
because that feels less like, I'm not telling you you're a bad person. This is the things that we've seen happen. And then Meg can come in and say, this is, we're going to give you a last chance letter or whatever the hell you call it. And this is the consequences of your behavior. That way I don't have to say, you know, we've been talking about this. I can say, we've been talking about this for a year and we keep trying to make this work and it doesn't seem to work. And here's what has happened, right? And then Meg can say, here's the deal. here's the consequences.
Yeah. To the moon, Alice.
To the moon, Alice. That's right. So that's, I think, but again, we force people to do, even in a team, you know, like we use the example sometimes of, we have somebody that loves people, and we have an organizer, and we have a fixer, say, and then we need to build a new website. So for a fixer, I might say, hey, Rachel, go talk to everybody and find out what they think about the website, and then get their feedback, and then we'll work on editing it. An organizer would think that was the worst job in the universe, would hate every minute of it. So if I had an organizer, I'd say, hey, Bill, go look at the analytics of this site, compare it to other sites similar to it, figure out what we're missing, and then we'll analyze the results of all the data that you collect. They would love that job. The fixer would hate that job. And so again, you get the same result. You get a better website, better performing website, but it's totally different the way you approach it. And so it's really, really important to just consider this stuff. I mean, why make people do things that they're going to hate? I just don't understand it. I mean, I know that and we're not saying that you get to do everything you love all the time. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is, how do you get the work done you need to in a way that makes the most sense for where you are in your culture type?
And when things have to be done that are out of the preference of people, the most gracious thing you can do, if you're a leader, or even if you're not, you can say to them if you're a leader in the meeting and you give somebody a job, you can say, Rachel, I know you really don't love to do analytics, but Jane, who is our organizer, who is really awesome at that, is going to be out on maternity leave. So I need you to do this. It's going to be a 3-week project. Thank you for gutting it out. If you're not Rachel,
Jane has a template, she will send it to you.
Yeah. And if you're not that, and then people say, well, I'm not really the leader, so I can't say anything. That is a crock of shit. Excuse my language. You can say anything to anybody to be encouraging. You walk out of the meeting and be like, hey, Rach, I know you really don't love that. I don't either. But like, if you want to catch a drink or go for, after work, or go for a walk and take a break, let me know. Or if there's anything I can help. Oh, by the way, Susie is really good at that stuff, and she helped Jane build that template. So maybe she'd be a good resource. So you can give people kind of like a high five and say, listen, I know you don't love this and I need you for it, or we need you for it. And that goes a long ways because it does 2 things. It encourages people, and most importantly, it says to them, I know what you like or don't like. And we really appreciate the fact that you're taking that on, because it's extra energy expended on your part.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why getting your culture type sorted out can be so valuable, because if you don't know, that's why people are like, if you're a fixer and I give you an organizer assignment and I don't say, hey, listen, I know this is going to suck for you, but thanks for gutting it out, then I might just be shitty because I don't like this assignment. And I really don't even know why I don't like it. Man, once you get your culture types, you'll be like, oh, well, that's why I hate that damn annual report, because I stink at that stuff. Doesn't mean I can't do it, but it does give you a lot more insight. And maybe you say, well, hey, I'm supposed to do this report every year. Really happy to keep doing it. Do you mind if I tap Bob and Sue, and then I have a team to work with, and that might make me feel like it's a little less onerous if I have a couple people in it with me, or whatever. I mean, it gives you the power to figure out, even if you're not at the top of the org chart, even if you're in the middle or the bottom, it can give you some flexibility, or know how to ask how to be happier at work. I mean, I remember being young or even old in a job and didn't know why I was unhappy in that job. And I couldn't figure out, I didn't know if it was me. I didn't know if it was a situation. This is just so hugely insightful.
I know. We could talk about our own stuff all day because it's awesome.
Amazing. I want to tell you a really quick story. I spoke in front of the School of Mines Innovation Club for Entrepreneurs. ICE is their acronym. That's what I was trying to remember. ICE. And so I had them all do the assessment. We all counted them up. 17 fixers, 17 chaos people, 1 organizer. So 1 order tolerant person. And then I asked the room, who in here is from the city where the school is? 1 person raised their hand. Guess who it was? Guess the organizer. All of the chaos people had decided to move far away to go to school.
Oh, Shelley told another funny story about this very thing.
Oh, yeah?
Not that situation, but same.
Same.
So someone that Shelley knows read the book.
Oh, yeah. Sunny.
Self-identified as a fixer.
Because that's who she wanted to be.
Yep. And then took the assessment 4 times. And every time it said she was an independent. And she just so badly didn't want to be boxed into independency or anything, frankly. She just said, nope, I'm a fixer. That's just how it is. So we independents are like, oh yeah, put me in a box. I dare you.
Any independent, I almost, if anyone asks me, how do you know if you're in the right spot, or are you sure that you can't be more than one of these? I just know they're independents. That's how it is. And I even said it to this class. There was 7 independents, and I said it out loud. Independents don't like to be pigeonholed. And I still had 2 people come up to me and say, I know you said it, but I have to say that I don't really feel like I'm only an independent. I'm like,
just hug them.
They're and then he got into a car that was hyper-color rainbow shades and drove away. But he doesn't think he's an independent.
Man, that's a great. I'm going to start using that at the end of every. I'm like, and then he got into a hyper-color rainbow car and drove away.
Oh my God, it had every color in the rainbow on it, with graphics and all over it. Like, clearly the most independent car in the western half of the state, probably.
Weird.
It was awesome. It was, what can I say? Our stuff works.
Yes, it does.
All right. Well, that's enough about us.
Anyway, one last thing before we sign off. I want to send out a huge thank you to the Black Hills Leadership Development Board for inviting me to speak at their luncheon today. It was a fabulous audience. And for those of you, maybe Kelsey and anybody else, but probably just Kelsey Sakos, who's on here, thank you for inviting us. And
that's
we're cool. And we will we have invited all of them to join us on IX Ambassador page, so we will extend invitations.
Do you have anything bad to say about them? Because this will be the only
now's the time, huh? Yeah. I don't actually. They were really great. They laughed at all my dumb jokes.
Oh my gosh. Well, plus this is recorded and kept, so I don't suppose you would want them to stumble into it anyway.
Yeah, probably.
We'll talk about that later.
Okay. I don't have anything.
If they laugh at your dumb jokes, I mean, that's.
I know. I win.
Point for them.
That's always a win. Anyway, that was a great group to engage with. So thank you to those of you who will be signing on and listening to this at some point in the future.
Well, that's right. And I'm speaking to the Spearfish Leadership Group
tomorrow.
I'm ready. I've already got their scatter plot done and everything. I just couldn't. I don't. When you're an entrepreneur or an entrepreneurial organization, you just don't even know what day it is. Every day there's more things to do than you can imagine.
Especially if you're chaos tolerant. Also, I'll give a shout out so they have these luncheons every month. They have go to their Facebook page, Black Hills Leadership Development. They have some great speakers. Like last month was Paulette Davidson, the new CEO of Regional Health. So they like do their homework and get some legit speakers.
Talking from her.
I know.
She could really use our stuff.
I know. Ooh. Okay. Anyway. Anyway, I just thought of something exciting, but I also have to go get my children.
Things to talk to Meg about, but we can't. It's top secret right now.
Shelly, come say hi to all these people. Come on.
What?
Come here.
Come here. On the side.
We already announced our adding of Shelly, but
Hi, people.
Yay! This is Shelly, who is amazing. Okay,
hey, Shelly. All right. See you next week.
Lead powerfully.
Change the world.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, the clicking didn't work. There we go.